To be simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor with no letters after his name, no styles before his name, and to lose those military connections as well will really sting.
This is a prince who had, until all this stuff happened, you know, he was decorated for his military career.
King Charles is very keen to move Andrew and his ex-wife Fergie on. He doesn't want them to live there anymore.
Andrew Windsor is spending his last weeks at Royal Lodge ranting to himself.
One of the most disgraced figures in modern British royal history is quietly preparing to leave the United Kingdom permanently, and the destination he's chosen reveals exactly how fallen royals escape public accountability when they have the right connections. Prince Andrew has been completely stripped of every royal title, every military honour, and finally his long-time residence at Royal Lodge. But instead of facing continued humiliation in Britain, he's been offered a luxurious refuge thousands of miles away, a 16,000 square foot palace in Abu Dhabi, personally provided by one of the world's most powerful rulers, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, often referred to as MBZ. The property sits within a heavily fortified compound beside the Arabian Gulf, protected by 30-foot walls and military-grade security, where strict media control means Andrew would never face another uncomfortable question or photographer waiting at his gates. But that's not even the most revealing part of this arrangement. The friendship between Andrew and MBZ stretches back more than 2 decades to when Andrew served as Britain's trade envoy, cultivating relationships with wealthy Middle Eastern elites and accepting their lavish hospitality in ways that now raise serious questions about potential conflicts of interest. Once you understand what this gilded exile reveals about how disgraced royals with the right connections can simply vanish from accountability, why Sarah Ferguson is reportedly considering following him abroad as her own media opportunities dry up, and what Andrew's move mirrors about Spain's former King Juan Carlos, who fled to the exact same location in 2020 amid financial scandal, you'll realize we're watching the final chapter of a royal downfall, where privilege ultimately provides an escape route that ordinary citizens accused of similar conduct would never have access to. In the shimmering desert heat of Abu Dhabi, far from the cold corridors and constant scrutiny of Windsor, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is quietly preparing for what insiders are calling his permanent exile. Once a son born into extraordinary privilege, he's now a man systematically stripped of everything that defined his identity. He has lost every royal title, every military honor, and finally, his longtime home. Royal Lodge, his sanctuary of comfort, and what critics called willful denial for years, is gone. In its place, an extraordinarily opulent refuge waits across the sea. A palace fit for royalty, hidden behind towering hedges and heavily guarded gates, where the disgraced former duke can completely disappear from the watchful eyes of British media. The fall from grace has been genuinely extraordinary to witness. Once a naval officer publicly celebrated for demonstrated bravery during the Falklands War, Andrew's name gradually became synonymous with entitlement, scandal, and international shame. British tabloids have been relentless, with the Sun newspaper running headlines like "Banned Old Duke" after his titles were formally removed. After years of the royal family protecting him from consequences, even his own brother King Charles finally drew an unmistakable line. In a swift and decisive series of moves, the king removed his titles, stripped his military honors, and revoked his right to use the style His Royal Highness. It represented the final official act in a long, painful public unraveling, the formal end of Andrew's life as working royalty. Now, as he actively prepares to leave the United Kingdom potentially permanently, royal watchers and commentators are explicitly calling this his internal exile. He has officially agreed to spend the upcoming winter season in a small, modest property on the Sandringham estate in rural Norfolk, but absolutely no one who follows royal affairs seriously believes he'll remain there long term. According to multiple palace insiders speaking to media, his sights are already firmly set on something far grander and more isolated. A 16,000 square foot palace in Abu Dhabi, personally offered by one of the world's most powerful and wealthy men, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. The friendship between Andrew and MBZ stretches back more than 2 decades to the years when Andrew served as Britain's official trade envoy, representing the country's commercial interests overseas. During those years, he frequently visited the United Arab Emirates, systematically cultivating valuable connections with the region's extraordinarily wealthy elite and readily accepting their lavish hospitality. It was a diplomatic relationship that paid substantial dividends during his working royal years, and may now provide his permanent escape route from relentless public humiliation in Britain. But royal commentators have raised serious questions about the appropriateness of this arrangement. One analyst pointedly asked whether this doesn't expose both the country and the royal family to potential bribery and coercion concerns, sending Andrew, someone critics called Handy Andy during his trade envoy years, to permanently reside among Middle Eastern influencers and oligarchs, raises obvious ethical questions about ongoing obligations and potential leverage. MBZ has reportedly invited Andrew to live within his heavily fortified Sea Palace compound, a location where absolute discretion and extraordinary luxury exist in equal measure. The palace itself is genuinely extraordinary by any standard. Valued at approximately £10 million, it sits directly beside the turquoise waters of the Arabian Gulf, within a secure estate that also houses the operational headquarters of the Emirati Navy. Behind 30-foot security walls and a complex maze of military checkpoints, the compound serves as home to the ruling family and a carefully selected handful of elite government officials. Only individuals with government-issued security passes are allowed inside the compound. Armed guards operate vehicle barriers at every single entrance point, while sophisticated surveillance cameras record every approaching vehicle. The entire area is, as one knowledgeable insider described it, effectively invisible to the outside world. For a man desperately seeking to vanish completely from public life and media scrutiny, it represents the absolutely perfect setting. Inside the villa, the accommodations resemble something from an elaborate royal fantasy. 6 vast bedrooms, each with private ensuite bathrooms and climate control, are lined with imported marble. The private home cinema, indoor swimming pool, and personal gym are said to rival the facilities of the world's most exclusive 5-star resorts. The professional kitchen is staffed by cordon bleu trained chefs and fitted throughout with gold fixtures, from the taps to the light switches. Everything gleams with calculated opulence, designed not merely for comfort, but for quiet grandeur that signals continued elite status. One interior designer who worked directly on the property described the aesthetic style as classical, yet playful, with bold color choices and a distinctly modern twist on traditional palace opulence. Andrew's connection to Abu Dhabi runs substantially deeper than mere convenient timing. The Emirates' strict governmental control over all media outlets means public criticism of powerful figures is virtually unheard of within the country. Royal biographer Andrew Loney has stated this makes the location particularly appealing to Andrew. In the United Kingdom, Andrew remains constantly hounded by photographers and ridiculed in daily headlines. In Abu Dhabi, he would enjoy what he craves most desperately: privacy, respectful treatment, and complete media silence. Loney has publicly stated that Andrew would be genuinely happy living somewhere where the media is effectively muzzled by government control. He would still be treated as a senior royal by the local elite, and he can easily live completely under the radar, away from public scrutiny. It genuinely isn't difficult to understand why Andrew finds this option so tempting. His reputation in Britain is shattered beyond any realistic possibility of repair. Every single attempt at public redemption has failed spectacularly. His disastrous television interview with Emily Maitlis, once intended to clear his name, only cemented his public image as arrogant and completely out of touch with ordinary people. His years hiding behind palace walls at Royal Lodge transformed him into a national symbol of privilege gone catastrophically wrong. A man clinging desperately to luxury while ordinary British taxpayers footed the substantial bill for his round-the-clock security. Even now, his quiet, forced move from Royal Lodge to Sandringham has been viewed by the public not as appropriate humility, but as bitter defeat. And yet, for all the scandal and disgrace, Andrew has somehow managed to keep one critical thing completely intact: his international connections with wealthy and powerful individuals. MBZ's offer of a palace is absolutely not a small casual gesture between acquaintances. It represents a genuine lifeline from one extraordinarily powerful man to another fallen one. Sources close to the situation suggest the expensive refurbishment of the villa began soon after Queen Elizabeth II's death in September 2022. A subtle but significant act of loyalty that hints at long-standing personal ties. In fact, Andrew and MBZ reportedly first met decades ago during their respective times as students at Gordonstoun School in Scotland. What began as a schoolboy acquaintance eventually evolved into a valuable diplomatic friendship, one that may now provide Andrew with his only viable refuge from continued British media scrutiny. This isn't the first time the former Duke has been closely linked to the extraordinarily opulent world of Abu Dhabi's ruling elite. Over the years, he's been repeatedly spotted at exclusive invitation-only events in the region, often accompanied by his daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Both young women have spent considerable time in the region attending high-level business conferences and elite social gatherings. Remarkably, just days after their father's royal titles were formally stripped by King Charles, both princesses were photographed in Saudi Arabia and soon after attending a prominent event in Abu Dhabi. Palace insiders suggest the sisters are actively testing the waters, perhaps even deliberately laying the diplomatic groundwork for their father's eventual transition to a permanent new home abroad. It's a strategic move that in several ways mirrors the path taken by Spain's former King Juan Carlos, who fled to Abu Dhabi in 2020 amid his own serious financial scandal involving Swiss bank accounts and alleged corruption. Andrew, too, may ultimately find solace among those who have deliberately traded political power for permanent privacy and protection. For the UAE's ruling elite, housing a fallen British royal could even be viewed as a strategic gesture of international prestige. It signals continued global influence, valuable connections, and a demonstrated willingness to offer sanctuary to the exiled and disgraced from Western nations. For Andrew personally, this gilded isolation may represent exactly what he wants most. No aggressive press intrusion, no cold British winters, no photographers waiting endlessly outside his gates, just the constant hum of air conditioning, the glitter of marble floors, and a controlled world where absolutely no one dares to ask uncomfortable questions about his past. Here, his controversial history can gradually fade into comfortable silence. But for the monarchy he permanently leaves behind, the reputational damage lingers indefinitely. His exile might ultimately bring him personal peace, but it cannot restore dignity to a royal family still haunted by his choices and associations. And while Andrew retreats into luxury abroad, Sarah Ferguson faces her own increasingly uncertain future. With her ex-husband gone and her once steady stream of media deals and speaking engagements drying up rapidly, she is reportedly seriously weighing her next move. Those close to Ferguson say she appears genuinely restless, unsettled, and actively considering leaving the UK altogether. For years, she shared Royal Lodge with Andrew despite their divorce decades ago, clinging to a life of faded privilege and royal association. But that comfortable arrangement is definitively over now. The prestigious invitations have stopped coming. The social circles have turned noticeably cold, and her personal reputation has been dragged back into Andrew's dark shadow once again. A close friend told the press that aside from her children and grandchildren, there's genuinely not much to keep Ferguson in Britain anymore. And it's demonstrably true. With her daughters spending increasing amounts of time abroad and the monarchy moving decisively forward without her involvement, Sarah may find herself following the exact same path, quietly slipping away from Britain's unforgiving glare to start over somewhere far from scrutiny. The former Duchess once publicly said she deeply believed in second chances for people who made mistakes. Perhaps she's about to take hers somewhere far from Windsor, where the persistent echoes of scandal can finally fade into distant memory. As for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, his story has entered what appears to be its final act. Not as a working prince, not as a public servant, but as a private man living behind gilded gates in a foreign land. His new life may be literally drenched in gold fixtures and marble, but it represents a profoundly lonely kind of freedom, bought at the staggering cost of his name, his legacy, and his family's respect. Britain will move on without him in its national life. But in the deserts of Abu Dhabi, surrounded by marble and enforced silence, the fallen son of the late Queen will have all the privacy and protection he ever wanted, and absolutely none of the honor he once possessed. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.